Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks for sticking around for the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm Rich Walsh. I'll be joined by Chris Mueller in a matter of moments over to 93.7 The Fan Cam, and we're taking your phone calls tonight. We're talking about the Penguins. The Penguins look like they got a deal in place to sell the team. The Hoffman Group out of Chicago. Fenway Group, it never really seemed like it fit here, in my opinion, Chris. It was so impersonal. They never developed, I think, a connection with the fans. I mean, I'm not saying they did a bad job running the team, but the team hasn't been good, and that's not necessarily their fault. But, hey, they made, $750 million in the sale.
What would Ron Cook say? Good work if you can get it. I will laugh. I think Sportsnet Pittsburgh's future, since obviously Fenway Sports Group had a stake there, is kind of the immediate thing that I find interesting just from a business sense. But Rich, if your initial contention here is that there was a facelessness and an impersonal nature to the way FSG owned the Penguins, you just said they're going to sell to the Hoffman Group.
Well, yeah, like another group, right?
That doesn't, but that doesn't scream personality. I think the upshot here is the FSG had a bad relationship with Mario paperwork together here, Rich. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing about it is just how much does that group want to spend? How committed are they to, because I believe it's their first foray into majority ownership of a major 4 pro sports team. Are they committed to go into the cap every year when it's time for the Penguins to try to compete? Because FSG tried to spend. They didn't spend it wisely, but they tried. Ron Burkle, he would always spend. So I think any concern any fan has about a new ownership group is basically twofold with the Penguins. Are you going to get along with Mario, and are you going to spend money? And as long as they check both of those boxes, I think it's all hunky-dory.
I like the Mullsy Moles. You know, they're good sometimes.
They're rare.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, it's a very loose network of spies and informants that I have. They don't always ping, Richie, but generally speaking, when the Mullsy Moles make themselves known, it tends to be very reliable, even tremendous information, and I knew it was again yesterday.
So, yeah, that was a good one. My question to you, $1.7 to $1.8 billion. I think they overpaid. I know from what I was told that the Lemieux Group had it basically assessed at $1.3 billion. The Fenway Group was looking for upwards of 1.5, and they got 1.7. And I want to get to the Pittsburgh Sportsnet in a second, but do you feel like that this organization is worth 1.7 billion? I mean, they've had their worst stretch of years since the Rico Fata era, basically.
Well, I think what we have to consider is the old adage, and it applies to buying a pro sports team or me or you signing a contract to do what we do for a living, Rich. On some level, you are worth what somebody is willing to pay you. So I guess technically, if we're going to take that to the extreme, Tua Tagovailoa is worth $53 million a year because the Dolphins agreed to pay him.
Sitting on the bench. Yeah.
Right. But I think the thing here is you always have to overpay, I think, to get a professional sports team. So if the assessed value or the projected value is 1.3 and the seller is seeking 1.5, generally speaking, even in the NHL, which is pretty obviously lagging behind the other 3 sports in terms of popularity and visibility in this country, I think you still have to overpay by probably $200 million, and that's what this Hoffman Group had to do here. So that part of it doesn't surprise me because those valuations are one thing. But for example, I think what are the Cowboys, the most valuable franchise in at least American pro sports, maybe all of pro sports? Yeah. They're valued at something I think 10 to 12 billion. If somebody wanted to buy them from Jerry Jones, I feel like they'd have to fork over 15.
At least, yeah, you would think, yeah.
Steve Ballmer put in an insane amount of money to buy the Clippers, which are the lesser of the 2 LA teams, in an effort to try to just gain that foothold. So I just think that's cost of doing business when we're talking about these mammoth transactions.
So, I mean, if the Penguins are worth 1.7 to 1.8, I mean, if Nutting were to sell the Pirates, what would they be worth? They'd have to be worth more than the Penguins in this city, correct? Or am I wrong here?
You would think, just baseball in general they're all appreciating assets. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and talk like I wasn't completely terrible at Econ 4 at Penn State 20-some odd years ago, Rich, but they're appreciating assets. I mean, it's basically like paying yourself every year once you buy the team because the franchise is going to appreciate in value until like that bubble pops, which everyone, myself included, speculates will happen, but it just keeps not happening, right? And then when you decide to sell the team, you do what Fenway Sports Group did. You make yourself $750 million for your portfolio and to disperse to the entire the group. So, you know, I think that the Pirates would sell for, I would think, close to 2 at least, but maybe more. I haven't checked on what their valuation is, but probably add 20% to the valuation at least, because you know there are people who want to get into baseball ownership, because for all the problems that the sport has and a looming potential work stoppage, these franchises just keep going up in value.
I bring it up only because the same person that told me the Penguins' evaluation said that the Pirates are worth $1.3 billion as well. They're worth about the same. So that makes me think that, you know, the Pirates would sell for more than the Penguins did, if that were the case. And I know probably there are more people in Pittsburgh that want the Pirates owner to sell than the Penguins owner, I would guess. But that leads us to the Penn West University live poll question tonight. Just scan that QR code in the right-hand corner of your screen. Should Mario Lemieux have more of a presence under the new Penguins ownership? I think this is a no-brainer. Our audience is saying 74%. And I think this is the big part of the deal. I know his shares are transferring, but maybe he'll have a larger role, according to some NFL insiders like Frank Saravelli.
I mean, he's the icon still. I think Crosby, you can make an argument, is going to have like a better career in terms of the numbers. He will have a better career in terms of the numbers, but there's one guy who cuts a godlike profile really over this franchise in the NHL, because for my money, he's the best player to ever lace up skates. And so when you had a weird, frigid, semi-alienated relationship between he and the previous ownership group, people want to feel good about their team too, right? Like, people just want to feel good that everyone gets along, that they're all pulling the rope in the same direction, and that didn't happen with FSG, and it was obviously a wedge issue that frustrated, I think, fans and kind of bummed them out.
Not a bad failure. They make $750 million in 4 years. All right. I want to get into, you brought up Pittsburgh Sportsnet. I want to get into that in a second, but we got to take a break. Back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. This is our Xfinity tweet of the night from Frank Saravelli. He's the one that broke the story on social media. Malsey and his moles would have broken it yesterday. He knew about it, but here's what Frank Saravelli said. Hoffman family, a Chicago-based investment group. This would be their first not first professional, because they do own the ECHL Florida Everblades. I think that's based out of Fort Myers, but the first major professional sports team that they own. I read that they wanted to get into the NHL or NBA at some point. So hopefully they get Mario Lemieux involved at some point. But I want to get to what happens with Pittsburgh Sportsnet. You know, this is different because NESN essentially owns Pittsburgh Sportsnet. So is that part of the deal, or do they keep the rights to that and they only sell the team? Because there's a lot of things going on here, and I've heard that nobody kind of knows anything.
Yeah, I would wonder about Sportsnet Pittsburgh continuing in like the current branding and the way that obviously NESN put its television influence on it. I think you could, if you were FSG, you could have it both ways, sell the team, but keep the network connection to Pittsburgh in that way, where you keep having NESN own it and you keep doing everything under that umbrella. But there also could just be the desire for a completely clean break, at which point you have to start wondering about another, what are your other options? Does somebody else swoop in and want to take control of that property on the dial? So I think those games, pretty obviously, especially if the team starts to uptick again, and I know they had a strong start and it's been immensely frustrating lately, but they've always done huge ratings locally. They've always been one of the best United States markets for hockey on television, oftentimes the best. I would think it would be attractive to any company that wants to swoop in there if, in fact, Sportsnet Pittsburgh goes away as we know it. I would think it's an attractive property, because you're also getting inventory too, Rich. Like, you still are getting all those Penguins games, probably 70 plus a year, minus the ones that are going to be on national television. Getting all those Pirates games as well. So how many Paul Skeens starts is that? 31 or 32? So I would think if it does kind of get put up to the highest bidder again and they want to back and get away from that, then I think there's going to be interested parties, let's put it that way.
I would think with that $1.7 or $8 billion price tag, I would think that would have to come as part of the deal. You would think, but who knows? I don't know anything.
You would imagine.
Yeah. All right, let's hit the phone lines. We got Bill out in Greensburg. How you doing, Bill?
Hi, gentlemen. Merry Christmas to both of you.
You
and
too.
Your families. My question is, have you guys heard anything about the Pirates have gotten definitely silent? I haven't heard a thing about a possible trade or anything. It sounds to me the way this is going, they're going to go for second and third tier ball players again, and it doesn't sound like anything's going to change. Have you guys heard anything? I'll hang up and listen.
Well, that's kind of the feeling I had from the start, Chris. I don't know about you. I thought all this was smoke screens out there, putting it out there so people get somewhat excited. They would have to overpay for someone to come here. And I don't see any one of those guys that were rumored that they were going to overpay, that maybe they would even leave where they were, or, they had other opportunities. Why would they choose the Pirates unless they were going to significantly overpay? And that's something that the Pirates don't do. I mean, maybe they kind of did it in 13 to overpay for a couple guys, maybe Russell Martin, I guess. But I didn't see the Pirates.
I don't think they overpaid at all back then. I mean, people didn't love Russell Martin, so maybe in the context of, I guess, the fact that he wasn't this ultra sought-after player, but that was $19 million over 2 years. We're talking about completely different scales of overpaying that they would presumably need to do with some of these players.
Yeah, Schwarber. I mean, there's no chance. There was zero chance,
they would have had to
right?
go 25. They would have had to go at least $25 to $30 million more than what he probably made in the complete totality of that deal over the life of that deal. Here's the problem. You put it out there aggressively, and I think it's obviously coming from their front office. You've got even guys like Scott Boras saying, "Oh, the Pirates are taking a different posture. This is new. This is different." Blah blah blah. You don't get somebody in that tier of tier one big fish, and they haven't, and I don't think they will. Then it engenders a lot more ill will from an already, I think, largely infuriated fan base. You said you were going to do this, and so far you've gotten a left-handed relief pitcher to sign on who Pony, an ardent Mets fan, basically said stinks. Now, I think the guy might be a little bit better than that, but an $8 million a year lefty reliever is not setting the world on fire. Where are the bats? Second and third tier, they'll be lucky at this point. I think their best chance to add a bat is via trade. And I know that it should be just in a vacuum. Hey, just get the players. It doesn't matter how. A.J. Burnett was a trade, et cetera, et cetera. People want to see this team, and specifically this owner, spend money, even if it's just one time, like the rest of the big boys do. Even the Cincinnati Reds signed Joey Votto to a $200+ million contract back when that was a big deal and not just kind of standard money. The Pirates just do not operate that way. And I understand why people are going to be even more upset if they telegraphed that they were going to go about things a certain way and then they don't actually follow through with it.
So what's their stance now? What does Bob Nutting say? Hey, I tried. We were in on these guys and we tried, but didn't come through.
I mean, I guess what I would love to know, and I think the easy answer is, they weren't ever really seriously in. They just wanted to act like they were, which if that was like a PR strategy, I would have loved to have talked to the person behind the scenes who came up with that genius idea. But let's say it's not that, okay? Let's say they actually really did try to do this. Then I think if you could ever get, Rich, this confirmation or clarification that Bob Nutting really did authorize, hey, you can go out and spend $150 million over 5 years on a player. If you think the guy's worth it here, $30 million a year player, we're going to do this, right? If we find out that Ben Cherington continued to try to be the smartest guy in the room on all these deals and just wouldn't go to a certain dollar amount that he had been authorized to go because he didn't think it was worth it, then just fire him tomorrow, right? Just get rid of him. But we'll never know. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of obfuscation on their part. You're never going to get a very clear picture because it'll be he said. We'll never know how serious they were about actually spending money like the rest of baseball typically does. By the way, I think the Orioles getting Pete Alonso makes them look even worse as well. That's a team in a comparably sized market. I know it's a team with a lot more talent. I know it's a team that's a lot closer to winning. They just went out and ponied up for a big name. What are you doing?
They don't have a Paul Skeens either. Let's go out to Chuck in Uniontown. How you doing, Chuck?
Once again, thanks, fellas. If I don't talk to you before, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Chuck. I wanted to ask you about the Penguins' defensive situation. Do you think the Penguins, being that, that they've lost leads, the last few games, like the philosophy is in baseball, when you have the lead after 6 innings, you put your best defensive team on the field. Do you think the Penguins, the last few minutes of the third period where they have the lead, should...
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely been a problem. They've lost 6 straight. There's kinks in the armor right now. What do you think that they need to do, Chris?
They've had goals scored that have tied games, to what Chuck is saying, with Carlson and Letang, 2 right-shot defensemen on the ice at the same time. I think Muse's explanation has been he wants to possess the puck. Give me guys that are just going to play defense, even if they got to be hemmed into their own zone, and play it soundly. They're not doing that, and I think that's coaching right there.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a break. Back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Big wins for Robert Morris tonight in overtime against Youngstown State, 80-77. Also, Pitt beat Binghamton, 103-63. So 2 good wins there. The Steelers are 7-point underdogs in Detroit. It's going to be a tough one with that offense, Chris. It's unlikely Watt's going to play. But it looks like Derek Harmon's going to be back, and I think that's big. The problem is if Watt doesn't play and then you have Herbig who's hurt too, what are they going to do at outside linebacker?
Well, the problem is they're not going to get to the quarterback if both of those guys don't play, and I don't think either, they will, or if Herbig, it would be a miracle, I think, if they were able to get either of them really playing meaningful snaps.
Yeah.
I don't think Watt's going to be back for a while. Here's the problem. Detroit can run the ball on anyone. They're not quite as good as it this year as they were in previous years. But if you don't get to Jared Goff, guess what? You don't have a chance. He's an unbelievable 7-on-7 style quarterback. This is the best team they've played in weeks, probably including Buffalo, as crazy as that sounds. I do not have good feelings for them in this game, Rich.
All right, we'll talk more about the Steelers tomorrow. Thanks a lot, Chris. We'll see you back here tomorrow, same time, same place. Hopefully we see you guys on KDKA News right now.